Good Tuesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Browns getting ready. Short week. Have to play the Baltimore Ravens on Saturday afternoon. Some more disturbing news out of Berea as Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah put on the injured reserve. His season is over. So another linebacker goes down for the Cleveland Browns. Kevin Stefanski talked about that move as well as the upcoming game with the Ravens.
I know you guys saw the JOK injury news, disappointed for him. But guys got to step up in his absence. With this game, it's a big one. It's at home, division opponent. Guys are excited about this opportunity that we have in front of us. It's a very good football team, offensively playing at a high level. Obviously, we'll wait and see which quarterback we get. I know this, they're all good. They all can hurt you from the pocket. They can hurt you on the move. They can hurt you in the run game. So really, really good players, big physical offensive line coming on, a couple different receivers coming on. So they're doing a nice job defensively. I've gotten some guys back since the last time we played them, Bowser, and obviously the trade with Roquan Smith, Marcus Williams coming back off of the injury. So they're all playing at a high level. It's a very good front. It's a good front. It's good back end. And then special teams, that they got a very good unit. So we have to match their intensity.
And with that, let's welcome in Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com. Cory, this is not a game you want to be down 3 of your starting linebackers. That's probably the worst imaginable thing against the Ravens.
Yeah, it's been 4 linebackers on the season now that the Browns have lost to season-ending injuries. So it's been a next man up mentality in that room all season long. And I think the linebackers get a little bit more flack than they should. I think that for the most part, they've played well. JOK has been up and down, and the news today is unfortunate. But, Anthony Walker's playing really well. Sione Takitaki was playing really well. So now I think we're going to get to see a lot of Tony Fields II, who's going to take over in that nickel spot, that will spot with JOK going down. So it's going to be a lot of Tony Fields, a lot of Deion Jones the rest of the way out.
Yeah, I would agree. And again, we'll see how that works out against the Ravens. So this is from Bleacher Report. 3 takeaways from the Browns' Week 14 loss to the Bengals. Watson looked much more comfortable in his second game. Nick Chubb could not repeat his success against Bengals, and the final one, playoff push, seems unlikely. The playoffs, a very mathematically possible, not being very realistic. But I do think there were some decent things from Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, it was a step in the right direction. The success hasn't been immediate with Watson coming back from, 700 days off of football. Leaves a lot to be desired with the fan base, especially considering another quarterback had a game-winning drive this past week as well, which put a lot of pressure on at least from a fan perspective, want to see something out of Watson. And again, he did play much better. Still that turnover was pretty bad. He's still late on some throws, seen some things over the middle. But he's getting there. He's coming along from a strictly football perspective, which is a bit nice to see. I don't think we're going to see any sort of coaching change this offseason, play calling change this offseason. So he's going to have a full summer to kind of work with Kevin Stefanski. So unless things drastically change, that would be unexpected. So, we'll see how these last 4 go out. Again, there's less than 1% chance they'll make the playoffs. And with the Chargers and Patriots both winning this week, I can't see how there's a pathway. But you do have 4 games left and 4 winnable games to really stack some success, get a feel back for the game. And who knows, maybe the Browns can find something, down the stretch here at the end of the season that they can build onto heading into the offseason and heading into next season.
All right, so I know you wrote an article that had the snap count and observations. Let's take a look at some of the observations. Browns now running a ton of 11 personnel as well as empty. And there are plenty of snaps available for Jalen Darden when he is ready. Let's take a look at those 2. Really not a surprise if you got a quarterback that you're paying that kind of money to that has the skill set. 11 personnel makes some sense, don't you think?
Yeah, and the Browns have been really good out of empty all season long, even with Jacoby Brissett. I wrote an article back during the Pittsburgh game where I think they ran it 9 or 10 times, and every single time was a completion. that kept the Browns in favorable positions with the sticks. So the Browns have always been a really good empty team. And looking at Watson's stats, his numbers out of empty from his time in Houston, he's one of the better quarterbacks out of empty as well. And if you just look at the distribution between wide receiver and tight end in the past, it's kind of favored the tight end. You know, the money Hooper was making, the playmaker David Njoku still was on limited reps in previous years compared to, we never really got a full OBJ, and Jarvis Landry was more of a slot gadget kind of guy. So it made more sense to put more tight ends on the field when you don't have playmakers at wide receiver. But now the Browns do have playmakers at wide receiver. Donovan Peoples-Jones is very close to being on pace for 1,000 yards. Amari Cooper is on pace for 1,000 yards. David Njoku was on pace for 1,000 yards before he started dealing with some injuries. So they have playmakers in the passing game, and the passing game hasn't really been the issue. So it makes more sense, spread them out. And then with Jalen Darden coming into the picture, he was inactive this week, being in the building less than a week. We saw Demetric Felton on the field 9 times. And then last week he was on the field quite a bit as well. And he was doing a lot of jet motion stuff, which is a lot of the stuff that Jalen Darden was doing at North Texas. When he was drafted by the Buccaneers run a very vertical offense, and he does have vertical speed, but Darden's not a guy that's going to beat press man. He's not a guy that's going to win downfield in the NFL frequently because he can't play through contact very well. He's not very big. So if the Browns can get him in space, get the ball to him in space, work off of that jet motion stuff, which Stefanski's been trying to do in the past with, JoJo Natson and Jakeem Grant, who then went on IR before the season even started. So it's always been on the precipice that he's always wanted to add this element, and I think that's the kind of role they're going to look for Jalen Darden. And so over these next 4 games, we'll see if he's active this week after another week in the building. But I do think that's kind of the role they want for him. And again, David Bell played 51 snaps. He's a 3rd-round pick. He's going to play his snaps, but I don't know if he's going to be playing 51 snaps week in and week out. So I do think there are snaps for Jalen Darden to see the field.
All right, defensive side of the ball. Perrion Winfrey is here to stay. Had his highest grade, one of the highest grades on the defense from Pro Football Focus. Tony Field's role doesn't change after a big week. And the final one, will we see the young guys getting more snaps now that the Browns are essentially eliminated from the playoffs?
Yeah, so starting with Perrion, it's been 3 weeks in a row now that Tommy Togiai has been a healthy scratch, and Perrion Winfrey has gotten all of those rotational snaps, and his snap count has increased each and every week. And then this past week, he played even more snaps than Taven Bryan. So essentially, he played the 2nd most snaps of any defensive tackle to only Jordan Elliott this week, and I thought he played pretty well. It seems like he has turned a corner. He had a rough start to his rookie season. We all know it. But Myles Garrett has talked about mentoring him a little bit in some press conferences. So it seems like Perrion has really turned it around. He's really taken to the locker room and is really doing what he needs to do to continue to see the field and find more success incrementally on a week-to-week basis. As far as Tony Fields, it made sense against the Buccaneers and the Texans. The Browns would run a lot more base. Both of those teams don't like to spread the ball out. They like to run the football as well. The Buccaneers weren't very good at it, but they ran a lot of heavy run formations, which makes the Browns want to put more base on the field, 3 linebackers on the field. The Bengals, they're going to spread you out. So it made more sense. Tony Fields only played in base, and they were only in base less than 10 snaps against the Bengals. I thought maybe he could mix in with Deion Jones at Mike with Sione Takitaki going out for the season. But they rolled strictly with Deion Jones pretty much. They were with Kunasek playing a little bit as well at Mike as well. But, with JOK now out for the season, I think, Tony Fields is going to see a lot of snaps the rest of the way out. And that kind of leads into that last point as well of younger guys. So, Jadeveon Clowney's on a 1-year deal. He's friends with Watson. There's a pathway he comes back. I don't know if it's going to happen, though. So there's a pathway where they could say, we want to see Alex Wright and Isaiah Thomas these last 4 games, then now that playoffs are essentially out of the picture. I still think we're going to see a lot of John Johnson because he's another guy who's going to be on the cutting block. So, if John Johnson doesn't show something these next 4 games, I don't see a way he comes back. But, guys like Alex Wright, Isaiah Thomas, Tony Fields, young guys like that could really see the field a lot more over guys who, we know who they are, Jadeveon Clowney, guys like that. Taven Bryan, again, could continue to be phased out in more snaps for Perrion. I really think we're going to see the young guys starting to get snaps so the Browns can have as much tape as possible to evaluate these guys going into 2023.
All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Questions surrounding Kevin Stefanski. I noticed this last year after the New England Patriot game when Myles Garrett talked about making adjustments. Once again, yesterday, in-game adjustments. Kevin Stefanski doesn't seem to do that. And as a head coach in the National Football League, my question is, why is it that we don't see Kevin Stefanski do more in-game adjustments that benefit the strength of his players and the strength of his roster? I'd like to let you guys get your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Correct. I think that's a fair question. I have kind of thought the same thing. Where are the in-game adjustments?
Yeah, offensively, it's hard to say that because they've been a pretty good offense all year. You know, it's been a little different these past few weeks, but I do think they found more offensive success in the second half of that Bengals game. They still had trouble getting the ball into the end zone, but I think they moved the ball with a greater deal of success. You know, you could see that David Njoku was getting the ball a lot more in the second half. It's hard to make run game adjustments, though. If, you know, DJ Reader's eating up your offensive lineman, DJ Reader's going to eat up your offensive lineman, and there's not a lot you can do for your run game. As far as defensively, you know, this is where I could see Joe Woods is gone. I don't see any way around it, but this is where you could see maybe the Browns hiring a defensive coordinator who has had some, you know, either associate head coaching responsibilities in the past or has been an NFL head coach in the past, where making defensive adjustments isn't really, you could say it's the head coach's job, but like as an offensive line that Kevin Stefanski is, what is he going to do? What's he going to say in Joe Woods' headset? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not really his skill set. That's not really his expertise. So that's where I could see a defensive coordinator with a little more in-game savvy, like a former head coach, Mike Zimmer, Brian Flores, somebody like that come in to where, one, it's not really the head coach's job to babysit his coordinators, but where, you know, maybe Kevin can afford to be a little more hands-off in the future.
Yeah, I would agree with you, especially on the two guys that you named. Cory, Kinnan and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit more about the defense. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Cory Kinnan from BrownsWire.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I wonder if Joe Woods has any kind of input about what's going on. I mean, picking the players and, you know, hey, what do you need to help your team succeed? Because he has to realize that his defense does not work without a solid front four, even a solid front seven. And he looks like a deer in headlights sometimes, like he's scared to make a play call because it might cost him his job. I feel like if they'd have got this man better players, he would have did a better job. But they just wanted to build up secondary players, and yet you still get ate up by Jamar Chase. Cincinnati had one of their starters in yesterday, and that was all they needed at the wide receiver spot. You let a couple guys off the bench and practice squad come in and just, you know, wide open Hail Mary. You know, is it really Woods, or is it the people ahead of him or above him who aren't giving him what he needs? Do you blame Paul DePodesta saying that, you know, he thinks this is baseball and just we can go get somebody for cheaper who does this just as good? But that doesn't work in the NFL because most of them guys who make that cheap money don't last long. This ain't baseball. So I don't know what to do with the Browns. I think they need to clean house from top to bottom, even if that means ownership, which we know they're not going to sell. But we just need somebody in there who understands the game of football. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Cory, I get the frustration with the defense. You can say a lot about Joe Woods. The defensive tackle situation, and I like him. I think he's done a decent job. That falls on Andrew Berry. You need some guys that can absorb double teams, especially if you're going to play smaller, quicker linebackers. And that seems to be a mismatch in my mind. What your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And that probably goes into spending money in free agency. And they did go out and get Malik Jackson, who was, an aging vet, but a guy who had a lot of NFL success up to that point, and it didn't pan out. Malik McDowell didn't pan out for a couple of reasons. So I do think that falls back on Andrew Berry, but it's hard to discuss NFL draft hit rate and not say that, there's only 30% of first rounders who get second contracts. So drafting's not an easy thing. And I would say Andrew Berry's hit rate is probably in the top third of the league based on, finding guys like Martin Emerson in the third round, Donovan Peoples-Jones in the sixth round. Harrison Bryant has played well past what you'd expect out of a fourth rounder. Guys like that, yeah, you want more success at the top. I still have hope for Grant Delpit. As far as Joe Woods not having his guys, I would say, I think the 2021 NFL draft would kind of rule that out, where they went Newsome, JOK the first two rounds. I think that's pretty strong evidence that Joe Woods' input was heard. We'll see. I'm not ready to give up on some of these guys like Denzel Ward, because Denzel Ward was a top 5 corner last year. I'm not ready to give up on Greg Newsome because he was an all-rookie player last year. We'll see. I want to see what a scheme that doesn't have Denzel Ward playing 9 yards off of Jamar Chase could do. I think there's a lot of scheme-specific things that really make players look a lot worse than they are. Like, no matter how fast Denzel Ward can close on the football, if you're 9 yards off the ball, it's going to be really hard to make a play on him.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think this scheme is playing to the strengths of some of the players. Greg Newsome talked today about, can this defense still kind of be dominant?
I think the last 3 weeks we've honestly been playing, great on the defensive side of the ball. So that's just something we're just going to, keep trying to continue. And, it's like a pride thing. Like, at the end of the day, if they don't score, we'll win. So we're definitely just going to try to keep on, improving and, just keep trying to put our best foot forward to, give our team the opportunity to come out with a win.
And when, like, a Myles Garrett says, there's no way I'm shutting this down, even though he's got the shoulder injury, what message does that send to the rest of you guys?
Yeah, it just shows, that he cares about the team. It just shows that, we're in a never give up mentality. Like, we're going to give it our all every single game. We're fighters out here. No one's in the building is, moping around or, giving up. We're still going to go out there, play our hearts out and, see what can happen at the end of the season.
So, Cory, I know you've written an article on who stays and who goes from Joe Woods' defense. Take us through that and just kind of thoughts on the defense and how it might look going forward.
Yeah, so there are a few players who just logistically can't go, salary cap-wise. Like Denzel Ward, he's coming back. One, because they just gave him an extension and it would be extremely expensive to and hamper them in future years to get rid of him. So a guy like Denzel Ward, he's coming back. A guy like Myles Garrett, of course, is coming back. I think Perion Winfrey might be the only defensive tackle who comes back. I would be open to Taven Bryan if it were in a rotational role, because I think he has shown some things over the past few weeks. I don't think he should start. I think he should be, an obvious passing down situation rotational player. And I think, there's room to bring him back. The linebacker room is where it gets messy. Sione Takitaki's suffering an ACL injury in a contract year, at the back end of a contract year. We saw that with Olivier Vernon and Tack McKinley as well. And the Browns didn't re-sign either of those players because they didn't have any guarantees they'd be ready to play football again that next year. So the linebacker room gets rough because, again, Anthony Walker is also on a one-year deal. I think Anthony Walker, one, it being a torn quad, and two, it being in week 3, I think there's a chance Anthony Walker can come back, and especially when you consider the strong locker room presence that Anthony Walker is considered to be. If the Browns are going to go through so much transition on defense, I think you have to have a guy like that back in the room. Defensive ends, Jadeveon Clowney's probably, and Chase Winovich probably not coming back, but Isaiah Thomas, Alex Wright have continued to show you some things that give you some confidence. You still either need to go get another vet, and again, that could be Clowney. We'll see if he wants to come back, if Watson has that kind of pull with him, or, you need to draft one probably on day 2. Secondary, I think, is pretty firmly all coming back. Ward, Newsome's coming back. AJ Green is an exclusive rights free agent, which means the Browns have priority to re-sign him if they want to. And they love their corner depth, so I think he's coming back. And Greedy's not. It would be shocking to see him come back, especially with Emerson and Green taking all of his defensive snaps and him being a healthy scratch. And And in the safety room, I have a hard time finding a pathway where John Johnson returns, given the out in his contract, given that the Browns can save nearly $10 million by cutting him this offseason based on what they've seen out of him in 2 years in a Browns helmet. But outside of that, I think Grant Delpit's going to get that fourth year of his contract in Cleveland. You can't overhaul your entire safety room, I don't think. And he's shown a lot in the run game. He's still got to refine some stuff as in coverage, but I think he's done enough to where you say Grant Delpit can come back. But there are overall a lot of spots that can be turned over on this defense.
Cory Kinnan, BrownsWire.com. As always, great stuff. Thanks so much for the time and the insight. Appreciate it, Cory.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, Cory Kinnan, make sure you check him out. BrownsWire.com, some really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Tim Bielik from cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer straight ahead. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Maybe cliche, but there's no I in team. The only identity that matters is we. The collective effort to love thy neighbor is needed now more than ever. The responsibility behind pronouns such as I, me, and mine impact we, us, and ours. So understand that you make all the difference in the team. He, him, her, or she can't disturb our peace, since we control our destiny as student athletes. This is the power of pronouns.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Dave, are you kissing Stefanski's ass, or does he kiss yours? Or what? Got to wait till next year to open up the playbook? That's a good one, Dave. That's a real knee slapper there. We saw how long it took for Sean McVay to open the playbook 48 hours after Baker got off the plane. And we saw how Odell did better when he got to the Rams. And we wanted to blame that on Baker. But then Baker gets to the Rams, and suddenly that argument doesn't hold water either, does it, Dave? The problem is in Cleveland. The problem is the head coach. He oversees everything. He's responsible for everything. Trying to blame Joe Woods? Why isn't Kevin Stefanski blaming Joe Woods and doing something about it, Dave? Why are you such an apologist for Kevin?
As always, I appreciate the voicemails. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik. Tim, let's look at this. Baker Mayfield scored 17 points against the fourth worst passing defense in the NFL. So just hold on putting him in the Hall of Fame, and that's still a disaster of a team. Now, having said that, what the problem is with Deshaun Watson is he's in a new offensive system with different personnel. He's a guy that processes defenses quickly, and he's having trouble processing them because he's in a new system. He's not going to be able to process this into Kevin Stefanski's system until next year. That's what I was saying. But I will give you, things have not been going real well for the offense the first 2 weeks with Deshaun Watson, and some of that has to fall on Kevin Stefanski.
Yeah, I think I was tweeting about this during the game that I felt there was a time that, Stefanski should be more willing to open it up for Deshaun Watson to kind of let him air it out a little bit. And we saw, in the second half, obviously, being down 17 points kind of changed the calculus and forced Kevin Stefanski to open up a little more. And we saw, some of the glimpses, I think, of Deshaun Watson that, explain, why he's worth $230 million. Now, he wasn't as great either game, but, going from bad in the first game to, I think, going from kind of a D-. I'm giving him a D- in that first game because they won that game. So D- in the first game to about a C+ in the second game. So there's progression there. I think you can clearly see progression within Deshaun Watson, within his level of play. And I think maybe Kevin Stefanski's trying to protect him a little bit, because, again, hadn't played a game in 2 years. You're talking about you're throwing a guy out there, against NFL defenses at NFL speed. That's something Deshaun Watson hasn't seen in 2 years, and you're expecting him to perform like Deshaun Watson, like classic Deshaun Watson we saw in Houston. That's just not going to happen, and it didn't happen. So I think that's kind of why, maybe he was being a little more buttoned up with Deshaun, at least early on. But I would think these last 4 games, he should open it up a little bit more. And as for Baker, I think you kind of made the point that the Raiders defense is not very good. And let's remember, Baker Mayfield has played this season. He's been out the last couple of weeks or whatever because he's been benched in Carolina, but he still played this season. So it's easier for Sean McVay to be like, all right, let's just open it up, especially because there was no film whatsoever of Baker, in the Rams offense. It was essentially letting Baker play backyard football against the Raiders, and they ended up pulling off a miracle win almost.
Yeah, Baker on short or little preparation isn't the problem. It's when you have expectations and you have him preparing. So let's just see how he does the final 4 weeks. And I got nothing against Baker Mayfield. I hope he does well. I'm a little skeptical. The Panthers are searching for a quarterback, and they were ready to move on from him and put him down at 3rd. So that's all I'll say. All right, Amari Cooper talked about kind of getting Deshaun Watson incorporated into the offense and some of the challenges. This goes back to what I was getting at.
Whether it's a plant deep shot or whether it's a play breaking down, that's what's so unique about Deshaun's game is when plays break down, he's able to scramble and escape a would-be sack. And then we just play off of him at that point. You got guys going deep. You got guys on the going intermediate and guys running short. And, when he escapes the pocket, he can see that guy running free deep and throw it to him. And that's just a part of his game. It always has been. So, as the games go on, as we get more plays under our belt with Deshaun, I'm 100% sure we'll see more of that.
And that's part of the game that hasn't come yet is the deep shots. It takes time to get used to it because he does play off platform, off script. So the Browns got to get used to what to do with a scrambling quarterback. The offensive line has to get used to blocking a little bit differently.
Yeah, and it's difficult when you do things one way for 11 games and all of a sudden in the middle of the season you have to transition into something else. And I think that's the part of this that gets undersold a little bit is, Deshaun Watson missed 11 games. Obviously, he was suspended for the first 11 games, but they also had a different quarterback behind center, Jacoby Brissett, who was more of your traditional quarterback, was willing to stand in the pocket and make some throws. Deshaun Watson could do that. But, we've seen he's just at his best when he's mobile, when he's getting outside the pocket. And we've seen, we saw plenty of flashes in Cincinnati in particular of his running ability, converting a couple big 3rd downs, even a 4th down with his legs and getting the first down. So it's a transition going on, and it's tricky to do when you only have so much practice time during the week. Again, you're not always practicing to develop a guy and get him blended into your system in the middle of the week. You're practicing to get ready for the team you're going to play next. So there's only so much of that work you can really do, in the middle of the week. And it kind of has to come when you go, under the lights and whatever, and essentially play at live speed. Those are when the adjustments are going to be made, is on the sideline, doing it in live action, doing it at 100 miles an hour. And I think that's where, that transition comes into play. And we saw, he's developed some chemistry with Donovan Peoples-Jones. David Njoku has some good chemistry already with Deshaun Watson. The rest is going to come, I think, with more time and more reps, just like, Deshaun Watson starting to get back to what he used to be.
Yeah, and there will be plays that are added to this that Jacoby Brissett couldn't do. What I want to see is Njoku and Asim. That's something Watson does well when he's comfortable. All right, before we go to break, this is Week 14 studs and duds from Dog Pound Daily. We'll run through them pretty quickly. Studs: Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end; Myles Garrett, defensive end, and also the tight end David Njoku, who did have some catches, but I think he's going to get even more involved. Duds: Tony Fields, Jack Conklin, offensive lineman, and cornerback Denzel Ward. And again, I think some of the defensive issues, I think they're asking guys to do things that just are not their strengths.
Again, you and I have had this conversation before that, the job, I think, of a coach is, putting your players in positions to be successful. And throughout the season, I don't think Joe Woods has done that. We've seen, at times throughout the last couple of seasons that, even if the defense gets off to a sluggish start, they kind of figure things out. This year, it's just not happening. And, it could be, injuries could be a result of it. But I've said before, when a group underachieves almost collectively, the first place I think you have to look at is coaching. And, figure out, are these guys in the right scheme? Is the scheme being molded to what they can do? Or are they being asked to fit into roles that, kind of come on a sheet of, this is what our defense is going to look like. This is what you need to do, as opposed to saying, okay, this is what you do well. We're going to accentuate that. We're going to do this and this and this to get the most out of you and try and minimize those weaknesses as much as possible. We didn't see that. We really haven't seen that much at all this season. And, you look at those duds on there, obviously Fields and Ward had back-breaking penalties in the loss. Jack Conklin, he struggled a little bit. I think with some injuries and whatever, the offensive line in general did not have a good game in Cincinnati. But, it was encouraging to see that, Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney played well again. We'll see if that, if they continue again in 2023, or if Andrew Berry decides to try and get a new running man alongside Myles Garrett, whether it's through another free agent or a draft. But I would have to imagine this defense looks pretty different from the top down next season.
I would agree. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. A lot of voicemails coming up on the next segment. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Rough weekend. Is it time to finally stop making excuses for Kevin Stefanski and fire him too? He doesn't make zero in-game adjustments. He's horrible at getting his best players involved in the game. The stupid call to bring Jacoby in on a 4th and 1 when Deshaun, I think, was actually perfect on that drive, getting into a rhythm. That was the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And then in the press conference, you say you got to come away with points, but yet you chose not to kick the field goal, and you chose to go for a 20-yard pass or so, maybe, still 4th and 1. I mean, yeah, he was open, but you bring in a cold guy who ain't thrown since warm-ups and probably didn't even throw then. That was a game changer. That took points off the board. Not kicking the field goal at half took points off the board. Stop making excuses for Kevin. Oh, well, he didn't have Deshaun. Well, he's got Deshaun, and he still makes dumb choices, still makes questionable calls. He doesn't know how to make in-game adjustments, so it's time for Stefanski to go. Now, I don't have faith that Jimmy Haslam will hire another coach that's any better, but Stefanski's not the answer. So go Browns.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. These are the things that happen when you are 5-8. I can't argue with the 4th and 1. That was bizarre. I'm not ready to fire him, but some things got to change. They really do.
Yeah, I think the pressure is going to kind of have to start ramping up a little bit these 4 games. I think he's safe unless something catastrophic happens in these last 4 games. Like Deshaun Watson, regresses somehow and they end up losing 3 of these 4 games or even all 4 games. Or, if whatever else happens, if something major goes down that, it doesn't seem like Watson and Stefanski can get on the same page, then I think you make a change. But I also think, the only way you really do it is if you get a guy you almost know is better. Like, say, you almost believe Sean Payton's coming, and I don't think that's going to happen. I can't imagine, we saw this dance with Bill Cowher. He retires, goes to television, and everybody wonders, well, when is Bill Cowher coming back to coaching? And why would you? Why would you leave television, which is a much easier gig? You really only have to work, a couple days a week, for a few months, whereas coaching is kind of a 24/7 job almost. So why would Sean Payton want to leave that? I mean, that would be the caliber kind of coach to me that you would need to have to convince me to move on from Kevin Stefanski, just because, things haven't gone the right way the last couple of seasons. I think obviously defensive changes need to be made in the staff. Maybe move on from Mike Prefer on special teams. Those are the areas that have hurt this team all season. I think in some ways, while Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback, the offense was just fine. They were the ones putting up points. They were the ones kind of keeping the team in games. I don't think that's the issue, but I think, as you go to 2023, you keep Stefanski around, but you let him know you got to turn things around. You got to get things figured out, and you got to take this team to significant places. You got to take them in the playoffs. You got to be contending for the division around Christmas time. Those are things that just have to happen, and you have to get the most out of Deshaun Watson, or they'll probably be looking for another coach maybe in 2024.
Now, in fairness, you haven't given him the quarterback that he wants. Now he has Deshaun Watson. It's 2 games, and Deshaun Watson hadn't played in almost 2 years. But I can't argue about the in-game adjustments. And the 4th and 1 with Jacoby Brissett, I want to be in that meeting where you're deciding that, because I'm going to be going, that's a bad idea. That is a bad idea. Don't do that. It's like, just don't do that. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I would like to talk about the state of the Browns' offensive line. I don't think that some of these offensive linemen fit what Kevin and Alex Van Pelt are trying to do. With that being said, they aren't just trying to run the ball now. Now they're trying to stretch the field. And in my opinion, it looks like they're trying to do what Dallas is doing, what the Eagles are trying to do, especially involving the run game. You have to have agile offensive linemen, and we don't have that. Maybe you might need to move some offensive linemen around. Maybe you need to bring in some. I know Jack Conklin won't be here next year, so we need to have a lot more agility on the offensive line, so that way Deshaun can do his thing, Chubb can do his thing, and whoever is RB2 can do their thing, because we have to get going on the ground. The fact that the Bengals were able to stop us, and they've never been able to stop the run. Whenever we threw at them, they've never been able to stop it.
Again, this goes back to what I was saying, you might have to wait until next year to see what this offense looks like, because the line is going to be asked to block differently. It's not going to be exactly the same when you have a quarterback like Deshaun Watson. It's just different. It's not like you drop a guy that's a quarterback in the middle of an offense and you say, go get him, guys.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing that gets lost in it is, remember, Ethan Poston got hurt, 4 weeks ago against Buffalo in that game in Detroit. I think he left the game in like the first or second play of the game. Hasn't played since then. He's on IR, so I think he has to miss at least one more game. And, obviously he was the backup to Nick Harris, and Harris went down in the first preseason game. So that's your number 1 and number 2 centers out for the season, or at least out for the moment. And we've seen Hjalte Froholdt kind of come in, and, it's no disrespect to Froholdt, but he's been a downgrade from Posick, and you've seen it just has not been able to, do anything really well in the interior. When you have problems in the middle of your offensive line, they kind of expand outward. And, Bitonio and Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller are obviously very good in the middle, but if you have a weak link in the middle of your interior trio, it's going to get exposed. In the last few weeks, I think that's been exposed, and that's been just an issue, is that hasn't been able to hold up. And, from a tackler perspective, I'm concerned with Jack Conklin and his longevity. Is he going to be the guy next season, or they move on with and maybe give James Hudson a shot at right tackle? Jedrick Wills, we'll see. I think he's had up and down moments this season, but I think, ultimately he's been fine. If they can get an upgrade, maybe you move on. But I just think, what's going on with the offensive line right now, like you said, changing quarterbacks and changing offensive styles obviously affects it a little bit, but also just, not having Ethan Posick and, downgrading its center, I think it's had a kind of a domino effect on the offensive line, and it's just not allowed the run game to look the way it has all season.
Yeah, I agree. Ethan Posick was playing at a level of one of the best centers in the NFL, according to Pro Football Focus. So that certainly has been an area the Browns miss. Tim Bielik, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. Have a good day.
Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take another timeout. Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Straight ahead, stay with us on Sports4CLE.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, this is Fred from Cleveland. I know there's been a lot of criticism about why we're not running the ball a whole lot lately, and it might have to do with our offensive line going from rank 5th to like 20-something. Our depth at the center position or lack of depth has really hurt us, and it's like we're just getting mangled now. And Conklin doesn't seem like the lineman that he used to be. But I'm still all in. Go Browns. Roof, roof.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter, Plain Dealer, and Cleveland.com. Ashley, Browns are on their third center. That's always going to be a problem. There's only 53 guys on a roster and 22 positions.
Yeah, and really, it's like maybe they're on their fourth center, actually, because I think everyone has maybe forgotten about Dawson Deaton, who, again, he was a 7th-round pick. Like, who knows if he would have made the roster, but he was at least a center that they drafted, and he tore his ACL 2 or 3 days after Nick Harris had his own season-ending injury against Jacksonville in that preseason game. I do think injuries are once again like a huge part of this offensive line. And last year, we saw those injuries happening at the tackle spots in particular, right? Like Jed Wills played through a hurt ankle all year, and Jack Conklin, of course, had a series of injuries, including his season-ending torn patellar tendon. But this year, the center injuries, I think, have just killed them. And I say all the time, you don't appreciate how important it is to have a good center or a reliable center until you no longer have one. And I think Hjalte Froholt has stepped into different roles along this offensive line and played really well when they've needed him. But playing starting center is a big ask, I think. So there really is, I think, a ceiling with him that you wouldn't have if you had Ethan Posick or Nick Harris in there, the two guys you planned on playing most of those snaps. And, I do think, too, interior, Wyatt Teller has been battling, a calf injury and playing hurt for a big chunk of this year. So I think both of those things you kind of noticed. And on top of that, it's adjusting to a quarterback who, scrambles more than any quarterback these guys have played with before. So I think this adjustment period coupled with injuries has really kind of hampered this offensive line, and you see it on Sundays.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Jack Conklin met with the media, said he'd like to stay in Cleveland. This will be his home. Also talked about the run game and the offensive line struggles.
I think it comes down to us. We got to finish drives. Anytime you start falling behind, the run game kind of it's off the table. It's what eats up the clock, and you got to throw to catch up like that if you want to save time, and especially when we get down multiple scores. You really can't get in a rhythm. And the run game is more of, it's something that is built. You don't just set the table at the beginning with the run game. It's with most teams, when you start seeing big runs, it comes in the end of the third or fourth quarter when teams are getting tired. And when we build ourselves a hole, you really can't get to that point. And I think that really comes down to us being able to sustain drives and finish drives, and we haven't been able to do that.
And you know what? That's a very fair point. Ashley, I know you guys have addressed this on cleveland.com in post-game interviews or post-game segments and stuff. What's left of the season for the Browns? Where does it go now in these final games?
Yeah, I think there's still obviously that slight chance that is extremely slight. They are all but mathematically eliminated for that postseason race right now. So for me, I really think it's about kind of getting Deshaun Watson up to speed here. Deshaun Watson, they talked about it on the broadcast for the game on Sunday that, in that pre-broadcast meeting ahead of the Bengals games, he told those announcers that he was not up to game speed like he thought he was. And of course, that's because that conditioning is hard to maintain when you aren't playing. So I really think it's about getting his feet wet so that he and Kevin Stefanski can kind of learn what is going to work. The front office can learn, hey, what does he need around him in order to be successful? All that stuff, I think, is what's really important here, because this is your quarterback of the future. And you have to see what else you need to add to this team so that your Super Bowl window, in theory, doesn't close on you, because so many of these guys are in their prime right now. And I think the reality is, when you look at this year and how many games they've won, the fact that they most likely are not 98% chance that they're not going to make the playoffs. Like, you just lost another prime year of guys like Nick Chubb, Myles Garrett, Wyatt Teller, Joel Bitonio, Denzel Ward, some of these guys who, especially, in the case of Nick Chubb, are at positions that are pretty injury prone, or, that they have a shorter lifespan in this league because of how running backs are used. So I just think it's really important to figure all that out now. And I've been saying it, for me, it's almost like an extended preseason here. And that's just the reality of the situation, I think.
Yeah, again, you got to make sure that you don't get off to a slow start and waste another season coming up in 2023. All right, before we go to break, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I think Andrew, in the offseason, what he will do is he'll basically fix the offensive line. We'll probably get a couple new offensive lines to fit what Kevin's system will be like, because in my opinion, these 5 offensive linemen don't fit what we're trying to do. They're not agile at all. So I think we'll fix that in the offseason, and then we'll get another wide receiver 2 and put Donovan People in the slot. I think that will be good. Also, in addition, I think that we'll basically do a lot of pin and pull a lot of run schemes and helping him do the play action just to set us a path right now. I think that will help Deshaun once we fix the offensive line and then get another big-time receiver.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Ashley, I don't know if they need another big-time receiver. I would like to see them find somebody that can get deep. You know, it could be Anthony Schwartz, could be Jalen Darden. That's the one thing, you know, Amari Cooper is a really good receiver. He doesn't have the kind of blow-by-a-defender type of speed.
Yeah, I felt like, I don't know that I would use the term big-time receiver, but they definitely feel like a veteran receiver short. I know I've said that. Mary Kay Cabot, my colleague, has said that. That's what's felt like it's missing from this receiver room because, you know, think about it. If Amari Cooper wasn't able to play against the Bengals, like, your number one guy is Donovan Peoples-Jones at that point, which, like, Donovan plays pretty well against the Bengals. He played pretty well, got into a rhythm with Deshaun Watson on Sunday, but you are missing something there. They have younger guys who can do different things or have question marks, like in the case of Anthony Schwartz, but I do think they definitely are missing, like, that speedster element or even just a veteran presence in that room who maybe provides a little bit something different chemistry-wise on the team or personality-wise, because, you know, I wrote about it earlier this year. It's kind of funny looking at this Browns receivers room because it's made up the three main guys in it. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, David Bell are maybe like three of the quietest guys in the NFL, and they get along really well. But I think, like, if you have a different dynamic here, that it might change some things in that room. It gives them a little something different to work with as a quarterback room as well. So I do think, like, they just need, for depth purposes, really another veteran receiver who can maybe help in that room.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at some alarming Browns stats. Sports for CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, hello, Gabe. Love the show. This is your boy from Vegas. Got a few things to say to Cleveland. I stood behind Kevin Stefanski long enough. He is not a head coach. He was a great offensive coordinator, but we really need to start looking at ownership, number one. And Barry's not a great GM. He's an average GM who's learning to be a great GM. I'm lost. I'm lost for words. God help us.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Ashley, that's kind of the thing that you run into, though. You have to give head coaches and general managers time to develop. And I've had a guy that has called and been thumping the thing about Kevin Stefanski, and he made the whole Bill Belichick comment after the Patriots game. Kevin Stefanski has a better record than Bill Belichick did in his 3 years with the Browns. So guys evolve like anybody. They grow into their positions. I think Andrew Berry has the skill set to be a really good GM. Now, he hasn't hit on all of his draft picks, and we have to wait and see how they develop. And I think Kevin Stefanski is going to end up being a pretty good head coach in the NFL. And if the Browns fire him, I think they're going to regret it. Everybody points to nobody has gone on and done it. He might be the first if they let him go.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Kevin Stefanski hate right now is kind of being misdirected, or people really aren't understanding what they're seeing. Like, again, I just keep stressing, like, he is working with a quarterback who had not played a game in 700 days. I truly cannot stress enough how difficult that is. And just like how difficult it is to do basic things in terms of finding a rhythm on offense. I think people saw, if you watch that game against the Texans, to how Deshaun Watson looked Sunday against the Bengals, I do think we saw like a little bit of a jump, right? I also think it's misleading to suggest that like Kevin Stefanski is not adaptable at all, because I think it's the exact opposite. Like you said, Dave, right? Like he is so prone, I think, to adapting. He just really hasn't had to do it before now because there wasn't a quarterback change on this team before now. And I think you have seen that. You've seen them implement a lot of the read option stuff that they just did not do with Baker Mayfield. We saw that so much more in training camp just. We don't see 13 personnel really anymore, right? Like not a ton of it anyway. Not like the top team. The way they were using it was so disproportional to what other teams in the NFL were using it last year. I think we've already kind of seen them adapt, but I think it's going to take more time. I think people want that instant gratification and to think like this team should be instantly better with Deshaun Watson. And I've kind of been pounding the drum with this, like, I don't know, when we were making like our season predictions, I'm like, maybe they go like 3-3 when he comes back. This is a long layoff, and he is coming back to a new team with a coach that needs to learn what's going to work for him and how he likes to call plays. But I do think overall, like it just needs some time to develop, and they've already kind of implemented Deshaun Watson's bread and butter stuff from his days in Houston. We just need more time, and it's going to require patience, which I know in this city with this fan base that's waited so long, it might not sound fun, and it's not really fun to some extent, but I do think it's the reality.
Yeah, it's fair. And the other thing about it is football is such an instinctual game, and you're asking, take just the offensive line. They've been blocking one way for the first 11 games. They have to change it just a little. It's not drastic, but instinctually it's like, oh, I got to do this. And the minute you start thinking in a game that's as quick as the NFL, that's not a good thing for a player. These are the alarming stats we talked about. So, and again, people are going to point to the coaching with this. 8th most penalized team in the NFL, back-to-back weeks with negative EPA on offense. 9th time the defensive EPA was negative, and they haven't eclipsed 400 yards of offense since the bye week. So I get it. But again, it's all because you've kind of redone a lot of what you are doing offensively the last 2 weeks. And they're minor tweaks in game plan, but they're humans, and you're asking them to do things a little differently.
Yeah, and like we talked about the offensive line earlier, right? That's a perfect example of this. Like these offensive line players are like Pro Bowlers, and you know, maybe even we have 1 or 2 future Hall of Famers on this offensive line, right? With Joel Bitonio, especially. When a guy like Joel Bitonio, I was joking with Wyatt Teller after the game on Sunday, and I said, when a guy like Joel Bitonio is getting called for penalties, you know there's some ticky-tack stuff going on with the officiating crew, and that's kind of just what they were dealing with this week, especially, I think. But again, it's part of that adjustment, and you think in theory like, oh, Deshaun Watson comes in and he's such a good quarterback that so much should look different and he should fix it. But it is an adjustment for those guys around him, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to pan out in the long term. It just means they kind of have to get used to doing different assignments, and Jack Conklin talked a little bit about this today. Like you have to really be hyper aware of, okay, the quarterback is on the move, so I can't be holding my guy anymore because that's going to get called automatically. It's going to be an automatic flag. So I do think just it is all about these guys learning how to play with each other, learning Deshaun Watson's style, and just kind of accepting that, hey, there's going to be some growing pains here. But in the long run, you know, I think we might look back on these last 2 games and be like, maybe it was a good thing they were out of the playoff race, which I don't think most people would want to say right now, but it maybe allows them more freedom or will allow them more freedom in the long run to try some different things and figure out what works for him in this offense.
All right, before we let you go, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason one more time.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. Disappointed with today's game. The offensive line is definitely deteriorated. The center made DJ Rader look like he's going to be a Hall of Famer. The defense still wasn't doing too well, and I believe that Deshaun Watson definitely has got flashes of brilliance. My question to you is, how are they going to get good players to surround Deshaun when you have salary cap restrictions and no first-round choices? It'd be interesting to hear the answer to that question. Thanks a lot, Dave. Great show. Bye.
As always, we appreciate all the voicemails. Ashley, I think one of the things is Andrew Berry's really good about converting contracts and manipulating. They will have some salary cap space because they'll renegotiate. There will be guys that go, and they'll have it figured out. Moves will be cap related, not cap casualties. He'll figure out a way to get what they want to get.
Yeah, and he, like you said, right, he is so good. This is what Andrew Berry is so good at. This is the guy you want managing the cap space things and how they've structured contracts, who they pursue, and like you said, the renegotiating and guys who might be cap casualties, like we saw it with J.C. Tretter as an example of that last year, Jarvis Landry, guys who are good here, but hey, we got to make room for some other people. And sometimes, like J.C. Tretter would be pretty good to have on this team right about now, right? But I do think this organization kind of isn't just thinking like 1 year ahead. They're thinking 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead on what this is going to look like and how they can maximize the talent. But I would say for fans who are worried about the cap and money and things like that Andrew Berry's the guy who is going to be able to manage all of that because it's what he's really good at. It's why he became one of the youngest GMs out there, because he's so good at that and identifying talent and how to monetize that and keep track of all that stuff.
Ashley Bastock, Browns beat reporter for Plain Dealer, cleveland.com as always. Thanks so much for the time and insight. Appreciate it, Ashley.
Thanks.
Ashley Bastock. Make sure to check her out, page of the Plain Dealer, as well as cleveland.com. Guardians also made a signing. They signed free agent catcher Mike Zunino. 1 year, $6 million. Zunino, a guy that has significant more power than Austin Hedges, strikes out a lot, is coming off a non-throwing arm injury that limited him last year. But 1 year, $6 million. Zunino, guy that can hit the ball out of the park pretty well, does strike out a lot. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. See you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.